I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Governance Committee for December to order. Thank you all for joining us on this snowy morning.
It's finally winter.
It is finally winter. I should note that today's meeting is really about kind of doing a cleanup and understanding of where we stand for our work starting in January. So there isn't actually a lot of substantive work today. It's more just taking a view of where we are. So I'll do the roll call first. Councilor Tabor.
Here.
Councilor Lombardi.
Here.
And I'm Councilor Cook, and I'm here. And I should note that Deputy City Manager and Deputy City Attorney Suzanne Woodland is here as well. We need to review and approve 3 sets of minutes this morning. Hopefully everyone received those and is prepared to look at them. Here, I'm going to go to first the August 29th minutes.
I would move we approve the August 29th minutes.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next, we will look at the September 28th minutes of the committee. Can I get a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Not for me.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And lastly, I'm going to go to the October 31st minutes of the meeting. Can I get a motion to approve
So
those?
moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just thanks to the Deputy City Manager for putting in the time over the weekend to get those.
Yeah.
Great. I really, truly appreciate that.
That was my year-end effort. I don't want those lingering.
I do appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
I would note that I would have one change to these minutes.
Yep.
Under
Which one now again?
October 31st. Old business, section 4, subsection B, committees and ordinance review. At the very bottom, it says Councilor Cook would like input from former mayors and the New Hampshire Municipal Association along with the legal department. I believe that request actually came from Councilor Tabor.
Correct.
So I just
Hold on.
want
Where's
to
that?
make sure that the minutes
Just so
are
I can grab that.
It's the last paragraph. 4B.
Yeah.
I
Got
believe
it.
I was tasked with doing that. But Councilor Tabor requested
I think
it.
I offered to help recruit them.
Okay.
I'm happy to do.
I have made the note, and I will, did you vote on your?
Can we amend the motion to adopt the minutes
Yes.
as
As
altered?
amended.
Okay,
So moved.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The last set of minutes is adopted. So let's go back to the agenda for the meeting. Under old business, we've been talking about a few different items for a little while now. The first is parks and green spaces. And at the last meeting, we had our Eric Abbey here discussing that with us as well. I wanted to spend just a few minutes asking the committee where we want to go from here. At this point, we have not had a committee meeting called between, I know initially we had talked about calling a meeting between Rex and the Conservation Commission and potentially the
Public Works. too.
yeah, exactly. Public Works, Trees and Greenery, to discuss this. And Eric Abbey suggested also bringing in possibly parking, traffic and safety to discuss bike paths and spaces around that. Where would the committee like to go, I think, with this next? Because I think I would like to go ahead and send out a letter to if possible, to all the concerned individuals to see if we can start planning for something at the beginning of the year.
Madam Chair, I took a look at an interesting article from New Hampshire Municipal Association, always a good source for best practices, called The Power of Parks and Recreation in Building Strong New Hampshire Communities. And I also looked at a lot of other cities and towns around the state. The gist of the article is look at the benefits that you want to achieve for your community, the problems that open space and parks and activities at parks and recreation can solve. For example, child obesity and rec programs, older residents who want to stay active, open space as a break from, a more urban environment. So I thought that was valuable. Define what you want your parks and recreation to do first, and then look at your inventory and how's it delivering on that. Second, I looked at other towns and cities, and nearly all of them, big to little, group recreation and parks together. And not only have parks maintenance under parks and recreation, but that even includes cemeteries in a lot of cities and towns. And the cemetery committee is part of Parks and Recreation. I'm not saying that's right for us. We've got a great cemetery committee. But we have a very active recreation board that goes at its task with a lot of focus. But it's worth asking the question, I think, what if we may transform that into Parks and Recreation so that the same people who are working on our youth sports programs, our senior programs, our pickleball, our everything else, could also look at active uses of the park. Some communities have senior walking groups. Some communities have, for kids and obesity, something called CATCH, Comprehensive Approach to Childhood Health, where it's nutrition as well as activity, and they have kids out in the parks doing things, out in the bike paths, cycling, things like that. So I was interested in that, and I thought if we do get the stakeholders together, those are some ideas that we could frame the discussion. If we had a framing question like, what are the best active uses for our park and recreation facilities to meet the needs of our community? And then start with the needs. I'm thinking and talking at the same time, which is always dangerous. But those were some thoughts that occurred to me. I was also interested that Dover, one of the problems we were hoping to address, not a problem but an opportunity, is searching around our city limits for additional green space and open space. And I was interested that Dover had a subcommittee of their Conservation Commission called the Open Land Committee. And their role is solely to pursue additional open space. Takes it for granted that that's a benefit. It includes a lot of citizens from different parts of the city, and includes people who understand conservation, includes people who, maybe can marshal philanthropic resources So I was intrigued with that, you know. And does it make sense to expand recreation to Parks and Recreation? Does it make sense to put the eyes and ears scouting for additional open space under Conservation Commission? I don't know. Those are some interesting examples from around the state. And that might be the discussion, some of the discussion points if we got all the stakeholders together. That's a long-winded answer to your question, but.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think this is where we are at this stage, is we need to kind of share what our thinking is, having spoken with several individuals, and it's helpful because I think it's going to help us solidify where we're ultimately going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and two, I've spoken with a number of people, individuals, who are interested in this subject, and one of them was Eric Spear, of course. So you know that he's interested in this, but one of my concerns is that the Recreation Board is very focused on active recreation, and I think that to also get them involved in passive recreation, I don't know. You'd have to see how that goes. I think they're not incompatible. I don't think, but you know, there's been a huge push to get athletic fields, skateboard parks, stuff like that. That's kind of been that board's focus. Maybe it needs some other input to develop the ideas of passive recreation in spaces. So.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's an insight that I also, I agree with that insight. I think that we have to be thinking about kind of the big picture of what does the structure look like? If it's an expansion of rec to make it Parks and Rec, is it an expansion? Is it adding additional members to focus specifically on parks? And so is it a shift in mission, which would be ordinance-driven if we change Parks and Recs? But I also think a critical part of that is having a discussion with other groups like Conservation Commission and Trees and Public Greenery, and potentially somebody representing bike ped paths, and so we can have their input, and then it's easier to shape what that looks like in the end, because I think it also having them have that discussion will help create buy-in across committees as well. I think it's really important. We don't want to look like, as a governance committee, that we're stepping in and saying, this is what we think you should be doing, and no one's doing it. What we're saying is we've identified a gap in services, and we want to find a way to address it, and we want input from everyone. We want everyone to decide, help us and help them decide where we're going next, and then we will help them do whatever we need to do. If it's ordinance change, if it's, it could be changing rec to Parks and Rec, but it also could be something even simpler. It could even be setting up an advisory group of individuals from each of the committees that sits down and meets periodically that discusses this. So I think that, and they'll come up with other solutions as well, I think, in their discussion. I think it would be invaluable to have that joint conversation.
Let me pick up on that thought, because I remember when we were looking at the potential for community broadband, we actually went to the EDC and asked them to kind of appoint 2 members or something of the EDC to meet with 1 or 2 members of the Cable Commission, and it was a formal subcommittee, so to speak, but of combined members, precisely to be able to have 2 different bodies opine on what was or was not possible. So maybe that might be a way to go, which is to go to each committee and ask if they could designate 1 or 2 people to, either come to governance with, the questions or to meet collectively. But I think getting the whole committees together, given their scheduling pieces, might be really hard. But reaching out to each of the committees and asking either for them to answer a certain set of questions that they have someone deliver back to this committee, or have them come to, designate 1 or 2 people from the committee to talk about this, might be a way to do it, or to talk amongst themselves first, however you want it. But if that's useful, know that we've done something like that before.
I think that that's absolutely a reasonable approach. What is the committee? Do the committee members think about having them come to governance committee towards the end of January, so we give them an opportunity in January to discuss and maybe appoint a few individuals? I think it's a good idea to bring here. We're never going to get all of them together, but I'm sure they're interested parties in each one of these
Well,
committees. and boards.
that's a point at which we could ask each committee to send representatives rather than just a broad invitation to the committees. And so because if we get too many people here, it's going to be a long meeting.
It would be.
But I like the idea of getting a delegate from each of those boards and
Yeah.
committees,
Okay.
invited with the purpose of really brainstorming of, what are the needs in our community and what are different ways to solve them. Teeing off that needs-based problem-solving approach.
Definitely. I think it's also important, I know that Councilor Tabor, you've listed 2 questions to think about. I think that we should add a question around passive use of space. But I think we should also ask a question about providing input for master planning.
Right. Absolutely, because that's coming up in the second half of next year.
Yes. So, how does everyone feel about us going ahead and doing this? Let's look at a date where we can set the date here for the governance committee meeting, and we will invite them to come participate, to send representatives who can participate. And that will be the focus of discussion. We have a governance committee meeting already set in January, but we could set a second one that's specifically just for this discussion, if that works for everyone.
I think that's the way to go with that.
That'd
is
be the
having
logical next step.
a dedicated committee.
Okay. I intend for us to all look at our schedules at the end. I meant to put that under other business. I didn't include other business on the agenda, but that's the plan, so we can plan meetings out a little bit further than we have them currently. So let's plan a date at the end of the meeting when we're doing that. And then I will also send around since I can't send anything to you guys directly because it creates a violation of right to know, we will send out a list of questions for everyone to review so that we have input for our early meeting in January that we can discuss before that meeting as well.
Yeah, I think if there's some kind of information packet for that meeting that people can read in advance from each of the committees, that would be helpful.
Okay.
I'd recommend this article to be part of that, too.
I'm cognizant that if you wait until the 9th, which is your next meeting, to finalize the communication that you're sending to the various committees, given their schedules and when their agendas would go out, you could always have a snow day, either push out when you would have them come back, because you want to give them enough time to really have a discussion, I think, about this topic and report back. So I'm just cognizant of the timing here. You might not have enough time versus if you are comfortable enough just having Councilor Cook send a communication out, under my auspices or something, it doesn't matter how we do it, to the Rec Board, Conservation Commission, saying, hey, why don't you listen in on, if they want, portions of this meeting, and you summarize the key elements. Or if you don't want to do that, if you want to look at it together on the 9th, then I think you're going to have to choose a date beyond the end of January, just to make sure you give each of the boards that you're looking for input from adequate time to decide who would be a good representative, and for them to talk amongst themselves, perhaps first for a meeting, about their own perspective on the topic. So,
I think that's a good idea. If we could get something out now, an invitation, and maybe look at, there's the 30th of January is, at least on my calendar, looks pretty open. That would give them basically a month, including holiday time, for committees to assign people or ask for representatives.
I think that's not unreasonable. I'm happy to do that. Are you comfortable with that, Councilor Tabor?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's a good plan.
Okay, then I will go ahead and get something out this week so that they're aware before they meet in January. And
and would I be correct, you're looking at communication to the Recreation Board, the Conservation Commission, Trees and Greenery, and would you like to include Cemetery?
we maybe should
I
include
think
cemetery.
so.
And the other group that we should include is someone representing bike path. And
Is
and
there
that
an
might be
official
from,
committee on that?
No. What you'll have is, there is the group that focuses on bicycle access, which is Sabre. Eric E.B. talked about parking, traffic, and safety. I'm almost wondering if I'm trying to think, there really is no group for walkers. And so the only question would be whether you might want someone from Sabre to come and provide a bicycling perspective.
okay. And that might be reasonable, or we could even ask parking, traffic, and safety if there's a representative on parking, traffic, and safety
I like that.
who can
Yep. Speak
provide
to
that input. I know that there's a person on parking, traffic, and safety
Yep.
that only uses a bike as their
Oh, that's
primary vehicle, so that might
That's a good
be
choice.
worthwhile.
That's a good-
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And do you want someone from Public Works who
I would think. I think
basically is
so.
in charge of parks?
I think
right?
maintenance is a piece of it.
Okay, I'll add that.
Yes, yeah, I think it's important to also include our Public Works Department, because ultimately, they're going to be responsible.
You're going to implement.
Exactly, okay. So that's the direction we'll move in moving forward for Parks and Green Spaces.
Does the 30th work for,
The 30th works for me.
Yeah, it's good.
Yes.
Okay,
so I'll just put it on my calendar then for now.
okay.
10 a.m.
10 a.m., January
So
30th.
rooms available?
I think it would be helpful when we send the communication out that they understand it is a Monday morning 10 a.m. meeting, so that as they choose who might want to summarize or appear on behalf of the committee, that they're aware of that time, so.
Yes, definitely. The next item?
That's not a council meeting night, is it?
No, I believe
No.
it's not. We have a meeting the prior week on Tuesday, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, on
23rd.
Yeah, on a Wednesday,
Is
actually.
it on Wednesday?
Yeah,
Okay.
the budget meeting.
Oh, you got that too.
Yeah. Okay.
Has that, I forget what happened with the budget.
They did not change. Those meetings did not change.
Okay.
It's a meeting in May that was altered,
Yeah.
so,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, so the final calendar should be coming out from Kelly.
So the next item on the agenda is committees and ordinances review. This was, as I will refresh everyone's memory, since we haven't been here in a few months, we were discussing the various changes, recommended changes to committees to try to fix tenure and where we are. And we had discussed bringing in input from former mayors and from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. I have not invited them yet. I was going to invite them for the first meeting in January. I wanted to give them enough lead time. And December is difficult. So December is very hard to get people in, and I didn't want people to feel like they were pressured to come in December. So far in December, I've had 3 meetings canceled at this point, so I know that this is a real challenge.
I've had one that had no quorum, so.
It's a tough time to have a meeting
Yeah.
close to the holidays. So I will invite them for the January 9th meeting, and we'll see who we have. We've already heard from former Mayor Beckstead, who just happened to be here anyway for the committee meeting. But I will let him know as well, so if he wants to come in and share additional insights. So,
Right,
okay?
right.
Does that work for everyone? And I will ask some assistance from the staff in reaching out to the New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Yeah.
for any
We'll,
input.
we'll reach out. As you know from the last time, they were kind of like, no, you have a legal department. We'll provide general answers, but not review drafts. So we'll see what we get, but we might be able to get some kind of, hey, any red flags, some of the issues that we know are the red flag issues in terms of fairly unique in terms of the stagger. More generally, have any other communities been wrestling with trying to correct a stagger issue? I know I've got some conversations coming up with Rochester and Dover legal counsel on other matters, so I'll see if I can just work that into the conversation while I've got them on the phone. See if anyone else has wrestled with this.
That would be wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be great.
So that will be coming up January 9th. That'll be our discussion for that morning. Under new business, and the reason I still have this, I should have moved donations policy up to old business since we did actually discuss it some at our last meeting. At this stage, we've discussed the donations policy from the perspective of what that looks like from finance and what we should be thinking about around limitations. There's another element to this that I would like to bring into our discussions as well, around elections and declarations of donations around elections, which we haven't discussed yet. And we also haven't discussed, and disclosures of those as well. So I think that needs to be an element here as well in our discussions. I don't know that that donations policy necessarily achieves its intended goal. So I think that the committee should have that discussion at least to make to make sure that we are where we need to be, or we think we are where we need to be. So that's another element of donations. As far as next steps here, we're at the stage where I'm gathering information still. I haven't received back information. I don't know how much the deputy city
Sure.
manager has received. Yes.
Yep. So I have, and for example, the police department's donations policy plus their SOP. So they have a very, because they're uniquely situated in how they move through the community, it's not surprising that you would find that they actually have a fairly significant standard operating procedure, which, covers gifts and gratuities with more examples, definitions, than what you'll find just in Chapter 1, which is applicable to all employees. How to, disposition of unauthorized gifts and gratuities. So what I could do is I'm starting to pull together like a packet so you can kind of see what's being done. The library, last I checked, was updating their donation policy. Like the police department, they sometimes get, not just cash, people are looking to give other things. And so I know they were updating theirs, and I was waiting to get the updated one because I think it would be useful to see what is being done already. I know the fire department does not have, at least last I checked, a separate donations policy. They typically, those go straight through council, in the usual manner, or if they want to do some special fundraiser, they're typically getting some kind of approval from the city council. And then waiting to get a copy. I don't know if the school, I'm sure the school department probably has the written policy because I know that came up at the last meeting. So I've asked for that. And I think when you tackle the subject, maybe there's groupings. There's those that are covered by other elected officials, whether it's police commission, fire commission, school, and that's kind of one sort of sphere. And then you have the other sphere, which is everything else that's not covered, really falls under the city council purview, and there's no other elected body. You may have a few hybrids, like the trustees of trust funds, or not the trustees of the library, so that's kind of its own special piece. And then you have the completely different piece, which you've just talked about, which is gifts and donations related to elected officials. And I think it's important that when we talk about it, that is a very separate animal.
Yes, it is.
And just kind of keep in mind which realm that we're operating in. So if it works for you, I'll continue to gather pieces and maybe put them in kind of those realms. I was going to reach out to see, I know Judy spoke a little bit about how Dover handles theirs. I'm thinking if we build that out a little bit in terms of maybe the way other communities are looking, particularly at the broader band of what's going to their city council, how are they looking at it, just to give you guys a working pieces of what's being done. So that's in process, but I've got the PD piece, and it's pretty thorough. There's a short piece of here's how we move it through the system, as you got explained the other day, but then they also have just a little more in their standard operating procedures, a little more on gratuities and gifts and that kind of thing. And it might be helpful at the right time if you're interested in that, bringing someone in from the PD or from the commission to talk about it a little more if there are questions. But so.
Councilor Lombardi.
I have a question about fire. How does the boot campaign work for them? How does that work?
My recollection is they are not, that was the one where they're raising money for cancer, as I recall, correct?
Yeah.
And so that they usually do kind of check in and get permission for that special campaign. It is a bit problematical, in part, actually, because it runs afoul of our panhandling in some ways. And you want to be careful about what you don't want to make exceptions, as you know, in ways that can be problematical in terms of enforcement. So, yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Good question. And I just remember we discussed it. And I remember discussing the panhandling statute as that provides.
I know on the elected side of things, one of the concerns I have is around donations by elected officials to city entities, and how we handle that. For example, if the fire department or the police department has a fundraiser, or the school department has a fundraiser, at how much can a city, an elected official donate without that being considered somehow, I think we need to be careful with conflict of interest and looking for endorsements during elections. So that's a question I always have is, as an elected official, what is a reasonable amount to kind of cap or limit as far as donations when it comes to things like fundraisers for one of our entities, which we know some of them provide endorsements during elections. So I think that's a really critical question to think about.
Yeah, and the other way to keep that visible to the public and transparent is, the process we have now is the donations are listed, they come to the city council, we approve them, even down to the $100 level.
Right.
I'm not sure we need to go down to the $100 level, but I am sure that the more sunshine you have on all these donations, so that anybody can scratch their head and say, oh, that developer's going before the land use boards and he's giving a big chunk of money to Prescott Park or this trust fund or that,
Right.
I think that's got to be visible. you
Right.
know.
Exactly. And I wouldn't want any links to be made between somebody donating and, public officials and people who are elected. That's a difficult place to be as far as donations go, because people can pick and choose who they are going to single out in particular instances. And one of the things that I was concerned about is when an elected official donates to a fundraiser, it's not donating to the city. It's donating to another entity, but through a city entity. So if you raise money for cancer, donations don't actually go to the city. It's funneled through, but, you want to make sure that there's no perception that you're trying to get favors somehow with the next election or with the electioneering. So this is a kind of my question about making sure we have a clear donations policy that's not just on the other side of things. This is the other side, the elected official side of things, that's donations towards individuals when they're running, but also donations that individuals make when it is affiliated in some way with the city.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I don't think we've really kind of looked at that closely before, or at least not in my recollection. I'm almost wondering if there is guidance from the Attorney General's office that we might be able to leverage. So since I've got Susan, who couldn't be here this morning because of another meeting, but I will ask her. I think we can definitely see if we can get some information on that, because that may help us, help the committee kind of look at that fresh. Yeah.
Thank you. So if it's okay with everyone here, I would like to add, I think that on January 9th, we're going to be discussing committees and ordinances. We're going to invite individuals in to discuss that. And I think the donations policy, hopefully we have a little bit more clarity by January 9th. I'd like to add it to that agenda when we go into more depth on this, when we have potentially policies to look at. And we can take that in two separate areas. We can start with the city side of things and then separately discuss the elected side of things at a later meeting, if that makes sense to everyone.
I think that makes sense from the city's point of view to kind of work on, our own house first. And I think it'll be, hopefully in the next week, I'll have, a little binder of policies that we have in place so far. And you can have that hopefully before the holiday and kind of be ready for the January meeting.
are we maybe being a little too ambitious to try and do committees and ordinances and donations in one meeting? Because those might be substantive discussions of 30, 40 minutes each. I don't know, I'll toss that out to us for our thinking.
Potentially, yes. Do we want to divide that out and start and bring that up early February?
For donations, maybe.
Yeah, to get to
Yeah.
donations early February?
Sure, certainly, staff never objects to more time. As we try and tie up a number of things. Year end here.
I'm going to put that on the agenda then for our
Okay.
first meeting in February.
Okay.
Okay?
That makes sense?
Yeah, that does.
Okay. The next item I have then is sidewalk policy, which we do have a sidewalk policy. And let me see if I can, here it is.
Yeah, this came up with a State Street
Yes,
brick sidewalks.
exactly. So this is something that we haven't covered yet, but we've been tasked with covering. Again, I wanted to highlight it and get it on our agenda for next year. I want to make sure that we have a date where we know we're going to start talking about sidewalk policy. What I believe the discussion was at the council, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, I would really appreciate that, was that maybe we need to revisit this because we've had an incident recently where there were questions about removal of brick sidewalks and replacement with concrete sidewalks because they weren't defined as part of the historic district. So maybe we need a different policy that doesn't drive that. Maybe we should alter it slightly. So,
Or the other alternative is to keep the policy, but continue to allow the council to make exceptions.
yes, and that is a viable alternative.
If I just went to the city website and typed in sidewalk policies, and there's a lot. I mean, does that include policies concerning cafes, sidewalk cafes? Does that include, or is it just kind of the length and width and, of sidewalks, dining areas,
Sidewalk obstruction ordinances.
sidewalk obstruction, sewers, I guess excavation, flagging. I mean, there's a lot of policies around sidewalks. So just makes me think that's a big subject.
Yes, it is a big subject. I took our discussion as being really limited to what is the replacement policy for sidewalks, because that's what the council was discussing at the time when they asked governance to look at this. I had not ventured into the bigger subject matter, and I think that the council will be discussing that. My understanding is on Wednesday night, there will be some discussion around cafes, on sidewalk cafes and that kind of issue. But I don't think that we've been tasked with that necessarily yet. But I do know we have been tasked with this discussion definitively. And it might be helpful here to bring in some perspective from some outside players, I think. I would think it would be valuable to get views from maybe the EDC, because I think the question becomes, as different areas in the city develop in different ways, what is the best policy as an economic driver, and sidewalks around and being an economic driver?
How do you connect either side of the train tracks in the West End?
Yes, exactly. I think there are also questions around from the HDC. Maybe we have get some viewpoints from the HDC on what makes sense as far as brick versus concrete, and what neighborhoods are, maybe we should be thinking differently about certain neighborhoods that even fall outside the HDC, or maybe not, but I think that would be a valuable input. I think it's also reasonable to get a Public Works view on this, because they're the ones ultimately responsible for replacement of the sidewalks. And so I think it's valuable to hear their input as well. It always has a budgetary impact too. So that's a really critical piece, is that brick sidewalks are probably more maintenance.
It does. I think there's value in, understanding pros, cons, how it affects a project or not. Sure.
Yeah. And then maybe we can bring input back to the council with a presentation to the council on, these are what our findings are. And let the council kind of make a decision on what next steps would be with regard to this, rather than, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable with this committee kind of recommending to the council, this is what our policy should be. I feel like we should be gathering information for the council, so it's not done there. And then,
I would agree with that.
yeah,
And give the council options.
yeah. Does that make sense to kind of proceed in that manner, at least with this? I'm just talking about this specific policy, no other policy,
Yeah.
just this one sidewalk policy.
I'll also reach out and see if anyone from planning wants to be part of that conversation, because they may have a perspective in terms of how things link up and what's typically required. And
Okay. Maybe we could plan to have that discussion either towards the end of February or early March. Does that seem like a reasonable timeline? Okay.
just be cognizant when you get to the end of February, it's school vacation.
Yes. I'm suspecting this is going to get pushed to March, because we're going to have to close loopholes in the other two discussions we've already had. But in case we finish those early, we might be looking at end of February, or in that case. Is that an okay way to proceed? Okay. Okay. Let's go back to the agenda. And I have here review of conflict of interest. And the reason that I have that on the agenda, that was the one piece of the ethics ordinance we didn't look at. So especially if we're going to talk about, and this will come up, the donations policy and elected officials related to that, conflict of interest is a piece of that. And we should be discussing making sure the conflict of interest policy so far is reflective of where we think we should be. It might be fine, but I think we do need to have that discussion as well. And again, this is something that's no huge rush, but it is on the agenda to discuss. Is it okay if we put that kind of the last thing?
Yeah, I think there's still some more work to do on that one. You know, we mirror the state statute, but do we want to have language that deals with non-monetary conflict and the appearance of conflict? Can there be an appearance of conflict so big that it hurts the credibility of the elected body? And those are hard questions. I mean, but I think that's some of the work that should at least be discussed.
No problem with that, yeah.
Okay. So I am guessing that we will get to conflict of interest more broadly around April of next year. That's a guess. It's assuming we move more quickly on some of these other things. So we'll do some more background work there, pull everything together I'll start pulling together different policies from different cities, try to get more input around that from like the municipal association if we can, if they're willing to weigh in. I know they're sometimes reluctant to do so, but also from any of our neighboring cities on where we stand. So, okay. Is there any further discussion? Are we ready to open it to public comment?
I think that covers it.
Okay.
We booked ourselves out through April. That's good.
Pretty good. Okay. So I'll open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment?
Peter Huda, 280 South Street. The only comment I would have, especially on your discussing and moving out the conflict of interest further through April, is you have issues that are coming before the council and other boards currently. So I would think it would be more important to get that moved up. I would also point out in last week's council meeting, and this is not criticizing, not saying anything, but you had somebody who would benefit from your discussion financially vote on something when it was not even necessary, and it didn't even come to mind, obviously. And I'm speaking about the parking for downtown for the holiday. You have a council member who is a merchant or has a business downtown who would benefit on that. The vote did not matter, and there was a vote taken, and they voted. To me, it's apparent that there needs some education on either the RSAs or anything to do with conflict or the appearance of conflict on all of our boards. So my suggestion or my request as a resident would be that you move that up because there are a lot of instances where it's coming into effect lately. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay. And there's no one on Zoom except me. So I'm going to close public comment. Thank you all for providing input to us. With that said, I forgot to include on the agenda setting the meeting dates for next year. So we don't have other business, but that is the only other business that we have. So far, we have scheduled January 9th. We also have scheduled January 30th. I don't believe we have a February meeting scheduled yet, if I'm right, or do we? I didn't think we did.
I am not seeing any.
So let's look at so we have city council in February on the 6th. I would think that the February 13th date, therefore, would probably be better.
13th and 27th.
Yes. How is February 13th and then February?
That's good.
And then February 27th?
Same with March.
Okay. I love how that works. The number of
Thank
days,
you,
it's always.
February.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, in March, we would also be, we would be looking at around the 13th and then the 27th
Yep,
as well.
those are open.
Okay. So far, they are open for me. There is a possibility I might be out of town on that February 13th date, but that's not planned yet, and it's not definitive by any means. If we go into April, We would be looking at similar dates, April 10th and 24th.
Easter Monday.
It's Easter Monday. Is that a challenge?
I don't think
Not for
so.
me.
Okay.
Just looking
I may be flying back that morning, but I'll figure that out, or I can always have someone cover.
So you can have maybe the city attorney
Yeah, depends.
schedules.
Yeah, well, yeah, my daughter's having surgery, so I'm thinking I'm out there, but flying back the 10th, I think.
Okay. Okay. So that might be one we might have to change. Why don't we put it on the schedule?
Yeah,
And then,
stick with it for now.
and then May is a little bit more challenging because we have city council on the 8th. And then we have all-day city council on the 15th
Yes, and the evening.
and evening. So
I think we're going to regret that.
I'm pretty sure the 15th doesn't work. We could possibly, we also have city council, by the way, on the 1st. So we have 1st, 8th, and 15th that month. When we get to May, I would suggest we either hold our first meeting on the 8th, which is a day of city council, and then the 22nd when we don't have city council is what I would recommend.
Do we have a regularly scheduled council meeting on the 8th?
We do on the 8th. We also have city council on the 1st,
Right, you're in April?
in May.
May, okay.
So we get to May, we have city council the 1st, 8th, 15th. So.
So the 15th does not have a night meeting in addition to the...
It does.
It does.
We have 3 night meetings. I think that one of those is
One of them's a budget.
a budget adoption. Yeah, the budget hearing is on the 8th.
Yeah.
So that's why the 8th is probably,
And when is the all-day one
best.
again?
it's the 15th. That's what we changed at council, the last council session.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah.
So 15th of,
The 15th of May, just put a mark from 8 a.m. through 11 p.m. in your calendar for city council.
Yeah, maybe just only have March 22nd?
Or May 22nd. We could
May
also do
22nd.
that. We're all pretty busy with the budget
yeah.
at that stage. I'm fine with that, too, if we only meet once in May.
Right, because the next Monday is Memorial Day, so you're knocked off on that.
Yes, it's complicated. I think it becomes difficult when we start moving these meetings to Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It's confusing for people. So let's just plan on May the 22nd.
Yeah.
And then when you go into June is, we would be looking at the 12th and 26th.
Mm-hmm.
July's a little bit challenging as well.
I'd
Only
say one meeting only.
There's only
Yeah.
one meeting, yeah.
there's only one council meeting, but then if we tried to schedule around it, we would be looking at like the 3rd, which I
Yeah.
don't think anyone wants to schedule on the 3rd.
No.
And then so we would be the 17th potentially?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then if we really wanted to, we could add a meeting on July 31st if we felt like we needed another meeting,
Yeah.
If we really wanted to.
if we really wanted to, okay? That's not a requirement.
It's heavy vacation time.
It is a heavy vacation time, and I think July 31st is a challenge.
Right, because
Yeah.
it's both July vacation and August starting for people who
Yeah.
are, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm going to make a recommendation that's going to sound crazy, but I think that it would be good for us because it's more likely to work for people's schedules, that in August, we schedule on a city council day because people will be in town. for city council. And that way, we're not adding an extra day somewhere in the calendar when people might be able to travel.
No, I think that makes sense.
How is August the 7th for everyone?
It's good.
Okay. So we could also do August 21st if we wanted to. That would be 2 days that we have council. It would be the only month that we did something like that. But it's up to you guys.
21st is back to school, really. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking the 7th is,
7th is good.
Yeah, the 7th is good.
The 7th is good, and leave the 21st off.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
I have another committee that meets that day as well. So I'm okay with whatever we end up with. September 11th and 25th. Now, the 11th is we don't consider that a holiday here, do we? But there are ceremonies that morning.
Oh, right, no.
So that will be a bit of a challenge. The ceremony usually, I think,
At 9,
yes, is at
right
9.
around.
So we should be able to go straight from the ceremony in for a meeting. If that works for everyone on the 11th? Okay.
Let's see.
Okay. And so that's the 11th and 25th of September. Trying to get these scheduled out so that we're not trying to schedule them during the year. October, once again, we have a holiday on a Monday, on that first Monday. That might be the only meeting that I make a recommendation that we move it to Tuesday. That first October 9th.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so if
City
we do,
Hall's closed.
yeah, if we do October 10th instead, which is a Tuesday morning. Just so that we avoid the holiday and we don't push it. I don't want to push it into a city council, the next week to a city council week if we can avoid it. So that would be our only Tuesday, October 10th. Okay? 10th, 23rd. November, it would be, November might be a challenge because the 6th is the day before Election Day.
Yeah,
I think maybe we shouldn't meet that day.
no.
Probably not.
So I think maybe November the 20th. And we'll just keep it at
One
or
day.
one day, although I should know that's Thanksgiving week. It's the Monday before Thanksgiving. Do people want to meet the Monday before Thanksgiving? Or do we want to meet on a city council night, which is the 13th?
I think it's probably better to have the 13th.
Okay. I know I'm here, but I know that I'm probably the only one that's stuck here because of a school schedule that week. So
So did you decide on the 13th?
on the 13th, yes. So we've got 2 meetings so far that we have city council, the one in August, the one in November, November the 13th. And then in December,
Well, the 13th is just certifying the election, right?
no, that's the 9th. The 9th, the
Okay.
13th is a full city council meeting that night.
Yeah.
So, so we would be having that meeting the same day as city council. The only advantage to that is we avoid meeting just before the election day, and we avoid meeting Thanksgiving. So it might be worth just the pain of doing a morning meeting and city council that evening. It allows more flexibility, I think, for everyone. And then we get to December. I don't know the December Hanukkah schedule for next
I
year.
don't have that right now, but Hanukkah's less important than things like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. and-
Well, we've got an
Exactly.
ordinance, though.
But we have an ordinance that we have to recognize Hanukkah. So I just want to make sure, I would say that the anticipated meeting date for December would be the 11th, assuming that we don't have Hanukkah. And I didn't look to see in September when the high holy days are.
December Hanukkah next year is the 7th through the 15th.
That's right in the middle of Hanukkah, so we can't do that. So maybe we should plan for the prior, either the city council meeting day, that first Monday in December? Or we'll plan for the second? What would be preferred?
Where are we at?
For December? So we would either be looking at, what is that?
December 4, December 18th.
Yeah, December 4th or December 18th. I don't have my calendar up now. I'm looking for high holy days.
I think the 4th. I think the 18th,
The 18th is probably more difficult.
yeah.
I think people get really busy towards the end of the month.
Yeah.
Looks like Rosh Hashanah is September 16th.
Okay? That's good. We've avoided that. Yeah,
Yom
September
Kippur is
15th, is 6th, 17th.
Yom Kippur is the 25th, so
Okay,
that
so
would
we
be a
need to move
problem
that,
for you.
we have to move that September 25th meeting.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we should consider, we've got one Tuesday on the 10th, maybe we should consider moving that one to the, because that one to the 26th as well, to make it a Tuesday in September, a Tuesday in October.
Well, is the ordinance for all committees or just council?
So let me clarify, it's not an ordinance,
No, it's
it is a policy.
a policy.
And the intention is simply to be reasonably respectful of the broad diversity of religious holidays out there. So it's not a mandatory, it is a, try to adjust the schedule so as to accommodate. And it's across, it is beyond the city council. We've been trying to be a little more cognizant when we're scheduling, but there are a lot of meetings going on. So we're also, it's, and also recognizing some holidays are, depending on the nature of the practice, you can still work that holiday. It's not a violation to work that holiday, and there's just a service. So we're trying to have some subtlety about it, but I would certainly move the Yom Kippur one.
Yes, definitely. That one needs
that's
to
a big-
move. The
Yep,
24th has
exactly.
to move.
I mean,
So-
yeah. Or the other possibility is, when you think about what's left on under your new business and when you'll be taking it up, it may be once a month by the time you're getting to that back end of the year.
Maybe we should just take out the 25th and just meet the September 11th date. And then if we need to add a date, we can add
Yeah.
in a second date in September.
Yeah.
Because we do
September
have 2
25th is
dates.
Yom Kippur.
Yes,
Right.
we can't meet
No.
Right,
Yom Kippur.
exactly.
So, so let's take out September 25th, and then let's go to, in December, maybe plan for the 4th
Yeah.
Yep.
instead of the 11th.
Okay.
And then we can always add the 18th if we need to. If we feel like we have additional business we need to finish.
Yeah. If you get to June and July and it looks like you've got a lot of work left, then you know to look for some more dates. And if it looks like things are tying up, then you're good.
I think we generally have a working calendar for next year. I will get out a list for everyone of the calendar so that we make sure that we have all the dates in your calendars. And I think that's it, unless there's anything else from anyone. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned for 2022.